Hello and welcome to MomFit with Joe Peters. Um, this is Joe Peters, and I want to welcome you into the Spanglish and the Herald Network in the single TV channels 250 and 251. Before we start, please remember to download both the Sigo TV app in the respective Android and iOS devices. While you are downloading, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Singo is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV, Roku, and Roku Stick in all smart TVs since 2016. So now I will love to introduce you a dear friend of mine and one of those leading experts in the field of breastfeeding. And we are up for a treat because Anne had this magical combination of things. First, her background and her knowledge as a nurse, and then she mixed that with her love and her passion to help moms in the journey of breastfeeding. So today we are going to go deeper with her on this beautiful topic of breastfeeding is easy as walking, not as easy as breathing. And thank you so much for joining us in MomFed, being our guest today. I love you and sending you a big hug. And let's get started. I would love if you start with a little introduction of who you are as a professional, as a mom, an amazing goddess unicorn.
Well, thank you for that beautiful introduction, Joe. I am so honored to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Um, like Joe said, I am a lactation consultant and my background is a nurse. I was actually an oncology nurse working with adult cancer patients when I had my first child. And breastfeeding was not as easy as I expected. um, and I didn't have the support system that I didn't know I needed. And so once I kind of figured it all out and got it all together, I thought, oh, this this is a population that I can speak to directly from the heart. Um, and so I left the world of oncology and moved over to postpartum nursing. And I did that for a few years while I gained experience and knowledge and did classes and hands-on education and just community experience that set me up to sit for the certification to become an international board certified lactation consultant. And so that's where we are. I've been a lactation consultant since 2017 is when I got my license or my certification. And I worked in the hospital setting. I have worked in the hospital setting since then. And in the last couple years, I started a private practice so that I could go into people's homes and help them there. And that's been a really rewarding experience. So,
And for all of you to know, like a little bit of the story of how I met Anne, because Anne had a golden heart. So when the pandemic hit, it was very stressful for all mamas because starting with we have so many moms that had to give birth alone without even their partner because they were not allowed. And then the ones that were allowed to was only one person. And then they didn't have all this support because all the support was supposed to be in person. And then Anne transitioned her business into also doing online support during the last couple of years. So she knew that moms need support and mom were luck. And we are going to talk about this because she believed in the phrase that I believe too, that it requires a village. And she knew that with COVID, the village was taking even further apart. We were already without a village before COVID. And with COVID hit, that take the sense of motherhood alone to a completely new level. So she did what she could to be there for the mamas, and that's when she started her journey. A lot of you know my struggles with breastfeeding and how those first weeks of my life were some of the most scary ones. And the day that I found out that my baby lost 10%, I came home, I was crying, and I was telling one of my friends. And that friend is a very good friend of Anne. And then I went into the online website, and Anne, as the busy mom and business owner that she is, she was booked like, I don't remember, like for 2 or 3 weeks. And then I just called sobbing my friend, and I was like, she doesn't have opening. She's busy. And then my friend was like, okay, cannot promise anything, but let me call her. And then she called Anne, and Anne was like, I will open a space for her. And she came, and I can truly tell you that she saved my breastfeeding journey. If I didn't have her at that moment, I will not be celebrating 11 months today of breastfeeding my baby. And what I want to do with that is talk with her so she can share with you, and then tell you to learn from my experience. Don't wait until you have the problem. Don't wait until you have the hiccup. Don't wait until life to throw you a curveball. I always tell you, prepare yourself with a team. And one of those teams when you are pregnant is an amazing ICBL, international lactation consultant, that can support you in a preventive way with a plan A, plan B, plan C. So if anything happen, you already are ready to go. So, and let's gonna start with where that concept of breastfeeding is easy as walking but is not as easy as breathing came from.
Well, I wish that I could take credit for that, but I am certain that I heard something like that from another lactation consultant. So I'll have to pass that out to the universe that I did not create those words, but they make so much sense to me, because when we think about breastfeeding, we have this idea that, well, I have boobs and a baby and they should just go together, right? Um, but it's not quite that easy, right? We expect that breastfeeding will just happen spontaneously, just like we breathe spontaneously. When a baby is born, they take their first breath, and then usually they keep breathing without any other issues, right? Um, but when we expect a baby to walk, we expect them to fall down, right? We know that our child is going to take their first steps, and it's going to be like one or two, and then they're going to fall over. Right? And breastfeeding is more like that. It takes a lot of practice and coordination, both from the baby and from the mom, because this is not something that we can practice ahead of time. You can like visualize and envision how you're going to give birth and how you're going to cuddle your baby and bring your baby to the breast. You can do meditations on this and visualizations, but you can't actually practice it, right? And so this is a thing that you are learning for the first time, and it's very hard to help someone else do something that you haven't done yet yourself. And your baby has instincts. They will know kind of what to do, but it doesn't mean that they're going to just do it every single time with no stumbling. Your baby has instincts to walk, but it doesn't mean that your baby's not going to stumble and fall. So when we think about breastfeeding in the very early hours after delivery, we think about it all as practice. Just practice cuddling, practice bringing the baby to the breast, practice latching, um, and know that you're kind of just gonna muddle through this together, the two of you, right? And then add on to that any kind of health history or birth history or anything like that can add little bumps in the road, little Legos to step on as you're walking through, right? If you haven't stepped on a Lego yet, you just haven't gotten there in your parenting journey, but it will come. I'm certain of it. Um, but but breastfeeding, we're going to stumble, and having someone else who has done this before and has the experience to say, we'll just move the baby just a little bit this way and maybe it will feel more comfortable. Sometimes that is all it takes. And then other times the plan is much more complicated than that, and requires, an understanding of, uh, anatomy and physiology, and how the body works, and how best to help the baby, um, in an acute period of time, so that you can preserve breastfeeding for a longer time.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and one of the things that I was thinking when you were talking on that and reflecting is I almost get like this anger on how much society has been pushing the idea that, oh, it's supposed to be super easy, and then if you try a couple of times and then you're having issues, oh, breastfeeding was not for you, so go and get formula because yep, breastfeeding was not for you, you were not one of the lucky ones, and move on. And as more I hear you, as more I say, like, how many of those mamas with the right support from an ICBL like you, from somebody like you, could actually understand that it's not that they are not one of the lucky ones, but that if that is something that they want to do, they have things that they could try. Because one of the things that I told my mamas is part of motherhood is support all the choices. And then if your choice for personal decision is either give formula or give pumping, amazing, that is your choice. But what I'm an advocate is if your choice is breastfeeding and breastfeeding is important for you, I am completely against society taking away the opportunity for you to be successful in that journey because of lack of support and lack of knowledge. So let's gonna talk a little bit about that, and from your world, from what you see, and a couple of things that you could tell and share with the mamas that are hearing right now, either that are preparing or that maybe in this moment are struggling and are having that little devil saying, there is something wrong with you, everybody else is doing it so easy, maybe you are just not meant to breastfeed your baby.
Mm, you're gonna get me all riled up. All right. Um, so society used to be a lot more together. We talked about that village, in the introduction, that we need a village. The village is not for the baby. The village is for the mama, right? We need support. So we don't see our cousins and aunties breastfeeding. We've separated ourselves from that support of a person in the very early days, and so we don't see people breastfeeding. I have a client who, probably 6 months into her breastfeeding journey, told me, I've never seen someone breastfeed their child. She's never seen it. She's never seen what it looks like to breastfeed a 6-month-old. She's only seen pictures of people breastfeeding, and those all look really nice,
I
right?
get goosebumps when you say that. Yeah.
Nobody takes pictures of themselves crying in bed breastfeeding a brand new baby because they're completely exhausted, right? That's not your Instagram perfect picture, right? It doesn't look good in a brochure, uh, if you put that out there, right? Um, so we miss out on how to deal with the hard, right? We don't see people struggling through. We see everybody's, nice picture. So I have a little bit of makeup on. I brushed my hair, but I'm really glad that this is an online interview because I did not brush my teeth this morning. It didn't happen, right? So that's, you didn't see that part of it. Um, and we miss out. I think some of us feel a lot of pressure to just put the best, the prettiest picture out there. And when we don't have community, we miss out on the opportunity to have real and genuine conversations with each other about just how hard life is, and this transition into motherhood, and the real true struggles that Um, we talk about baby milestones and how much they're sleeping and how they're eating and gaining weight and what cute outfits we've got for them, but we gloss over really hard parts. And breastfeeding doesn't sound so enticing if you say to someone, you are going to be the only one who can feed the baby for, X amount of time. And it probably is not going to be comfortable and it's super hard and you're not going to get to sleep as you used to sleep. Um, and so we don't prepare people very well. And also that message that says, oh, this is natural and this will go easily, that also prevents people from doing any kind of research. I was completely unprepared to breastfeed my first child. I think I had read a couple blogs. I signed up for, email updates from the pregnancy of like, how's the baby developing and things like that. And I learned about that. And sometimes they would email me information on breastfeeding. And that's about all that I read. And I didn't take a breastfeeding class. I didn't read any books, anything like that. So I am a big advocate for not doing what I did, and just like hoping for the best and like thinking that thought that, oh, I have boobs and a baby and it'll work, right? So preparing ahead of time, as best that you can. There are some really great books out there about breastfeeding. There are some really great blogs that do prepare, and then always, a breastfeeding class where you can ask questions of the expert, or having a prenatal consult with an IBCLC, that would help to answer your specific questions about your health history and your own breastfeeding goals, because not everyone's goals are the same. And like Joanna said, we should be supported in what our goals are. And I always tell clients that whatever works for your family is what works. And that's the very bottom line. And you should be supported for, for what is working and what is hard and how you would like to change it. So when you look for a lactation consultant, that's what you want to look for in a person, is someone who is going to be supportive of your goals and what you have desired, and not have an agenda of their own. Right?
And I think that that's a beautiful thing, and what is very important that we have that support, because one of the sad parts, especially on the Western culture, because in Europe and African Asia is not like that, but North America, South America, little is still like that, and is that shame around breastfeeding, and that shame about how it's not only a freaking hard job, but you have to be in this tiny little box where, oh, you cannot do it in public, and if you are doing it in public, you need to cover yourself, and if you don't cover yourself, you don't have respect. Like, you will not believe how many women are being attacking me in my social media, my Instagram, for my videos breastfeeding my baby in public, saying you are disgusting, you don't have respect for yourself, all these things. And then what I'm bringing that is because a mom that is very fragile, that doesn't have a lot of information, like, the story with my baby. My baby had a lip tie, tongue tie that we figured out with you and all that. But the sequel of all that happened the first couple of weeks is my baby don't stay in the breast for long periods of time. My baby take 3 sucks and then unlash, and then I have to move him to the other one and do it. And it's ideal? No, it's not ideal. But that itself make it for me impossible to put something to cover him, because almost every 10 seconds I'm having to pick him up and putting in the other one. And that is a price that I'm paying because I want to breastfeed him. But none of those people in the outside know that. And then when they judge, they put additional load on moms that are already fragile to say, oh, okay, so I should not do this. And what you are saying is so important, because when you have that ICBL as a prenatal, you create a connection. And I told all my mamas, that is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself. Make the consultant, spend the invest the money and spend the time, and then it's a win-win. If the baby come and you never had an issue, win. Perfect. You never need her again. And if at any point in those first 12 to 14 weeks you have an issue, then you already have a connection, then you already have a person, then you already have a little bit of bond, trust with somebody to say, hey, and this is going on, help. And I want to talk a little bit with you about the expectation versus the reality of those first 12 to 16 weeks, because sometimes moms are like, oh, I've been trying for a full 6 days and this is not working for me, so I get that I should just give up breastfeeding. And then you teach me a lot about that. And then the other one that I want to touch with you now, linked to that, is how seeing overproducers in social media is hitting mentally and emotionally our mamas, and what is the expectation on that overproducers versus what is the reality of what we should actually check ourselves against, instead of that not very realistic ideal thing.
Yeah, those are really great topics. So, social media, like I mentioned, with the good stuff and the bad stuff, everybody's putting out their best, right? Or what they think is their best. So when you see freezers full of milk, or gallon bags that are filled with bag after bag after bag of milk, what you're not seeing with that overproduction is plugged ducts and mastitis and being tied to a pump because your breasts are overly full all the time and the milk has to come out, or you're so uncomfortable that your breasts hurt so badly. You're missing that part of the story. Overproduction is becoming more common because we're seeing this, and people are thinking, oh, well, I don't have any milk in the freezer, or I only have a bag, I have enough for tomorrow. That they're thinking I'm failing, I'm not producing, I'm underproducing, when actually in reality what is normal and what is becoming more common are two totally different things. So I like to remind my clients that common and normal are not the same thing. And overproduction, although it's common, it's not normal. We don't need enough milk to feed the baby and the freezer, right? If somehow you make milk and it's just too much for your child, then that's an issue that sometimes causes problems for the baby at the breast. Overproduction can lead to issues for the baby, and so sometimes it's not a blessing in disguise to have overproduction, right? But we're seeing lots of people with freezers full of milk. And so what's normal is just enough to feed your one child or two children, or possibly three if that's what you've got. Um, you know what our body makes should just be enough to sustain them. Um, and the way that our body makes milk, in pregnancy, it's all controlled by hormones. um, Prolactin is a hormone that helps create milk lobes in the breast. The milk lobes are where the milk is made and stored, and prolactin helps to establish that. So as you're pregnant and your breasts are growing, you're like, whoa, lots of prolactin happening here, right? But the fact that you're not like just leaking milk, that is a responsibility of the placenta, which has progesterone in it. And progesterone kind of holds things back and says, well, don't make too much milk just yet. The baby's not here, right? The baby's still attached inside. So it's not the birth of the baby, but it's the birth of the placenta that detaches that placenta, and the progesterone goes with it. And then the prolactin can take over and say, whoa, now we can make lots of milk. But it happens over a period of days where your baby isn't born and just suddenly needs large bottles of milk, right? Their belly is the size of a cherry at first. And so they just need like a teaspoon at a time with each feeding, but it's frequent, right? It's a small amount, but it's frequent. And those frequent feedings help to place the demand on the body to make more milk. And over time, um, as the days go by, your body catches up to that demand with the milk production, and it changes from that colostrum, which is the first milk, to the mature milk, which is more abundant, right? But it's all still breast milk. It just kind of changes in volume, right? And then something magical about breast milk is that the content of the breast milk changes. So with formula, we see that our babies need more and more and more and bigger bottles as the weeks and months go on. But with breast milk, a baby needs the same amount of milk at 1 month that they do at 6 months. So between 1 month and 6 months, your body doesn't just keep making more and more and more milk, just the composition changes. And so the baby just, what you've got at that time is about what you're going to continue to make. So those first few weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, are really important for helping to establish a good supply, setting good routines. And it often takes 6 weeks for parents to say, I feel like we're like getting this thing. Like this feels more comfortable. I remember that at about that time, with my first child, I felt like on top of the world one day when I was nursing my daughter and the doorbell rang, and I was able to answer the door still with the baby latched and like sign for a package that was being delivered. And I was like, whoa, I got this. I think this is working, right? And so you look for those little moments of like, oh, we're making progress here. This feels like natural and normal, but it might take a lot longer than what you expected. Right?
And on that one of the things that I want to ask you on what is normal is, why you don't share with us a little bit about what is normal in terms of pumping, when you are pumping in between feeding your baby and when you are pumping instead of the baby, instead of feeding the baby. So the mamas got an idea of what is normal versus what is common, because what is common is we see in social media moms pouring 6, 8, 10 ounces of bottles. They're like, oh, I just pump. And they have 2 bottles of Medela full of milk. So why we don't talk about that is what everybody's seeing. Now let's want to talk about what is actually normal for your body in those two cases, in between feedings and in to replace a feeding.
Yeah. So people who are not latching the baby at the breast, who are exclusively pumping or are pumping while they're away from their baby, um, you can expect to collect a bit more at those feedings. And what is normal for one person is different for another person. It's really, really hard to compare. Um, to your friends' experiences. Um, a first time mom is very likely to express a lot less than a second or third time parent, because every time you're pregnant, more milk lobes are established and your body just knows how to make milk better. And the production is stimulated more early on, for second and third time parents, because they have the experience, they know how to do it. um, and so what they might pump might be those bottles with 6 or 8 ounces in them. It's also perfectly normal to have one side produce 4 ounces and another side produce two, right? Super frustrating, but perfectly normal. Um, and you also might notice that your breasts respond differently to different settings on the pump, that one side can tolerate a suction strength that's much stronger than the other side. The other side is very tender, and doesn't tolerate that at all. And some pump companies have said, like, oh, we're going to make a machine that does two different settings on two different sides, um, to kind of help with that imbalance, because it's a perfectly normal thing. Our breasts are sisters, not twins, as I was told by someone. So they're not going to respond exactly the same to the same thing. Um, the flange setting can also make a big difference. So the nipple size doesn't even isn't even necessarily the same on either side. So if you have one side that's producing a lot more than the other side, maybe it's the flange size that is not drawing out milk so much. Um, so for people who are primarily pumping, you're going to be noticing that a lot more, and feel maybe particularly sensitive to the fact that one side makes more than the other, but know that that's perfectly normal. And then we talked about, maybe 4 or 6 ounces total, 8 ounces total, even for, second or third time parents whose bodies have done this. But if you're pumping in between when the baby is eating, you're going to expect a lot less, maybe like half an ounce to an ounce in between feedings would be well within normal. So half an ounce uh, is like 15 milliliters, right, Joanna? An
Mhm.
ounce is about 30. Um, so in the metric system, maybe just 15 to 30 milliliters at a time, right? We're not expecting huge amounts, because you're also feeding the baby at the breast. So what you're doing is just taking out a little bit extra. Um, and that combined with what the baby is getting at the breast then sometimes is helpful for that weight gain. Um, Somebody asked, is that per breast or total? Um, that is per breast, maybe just half an ounce, maybe an ounce total. Remember that you're going to be doing, maybe one side is going to be more than the other side. So, yeah, you can just get half an ounce total in between feedings, especially if the baby's doing cluster feeding and things like that. Or if you're not well hydrated yourself or fueling your own body, you can be getting a little bit less.
And I love that. And thank you, Nicole, for asking that question, because there is so many moms that judge how much they are producing for their baby based on how much they are pumping. And you will not believe how many moms I had in my tribe, in my community, crying, saying, I'm not producing enough. And then I start asking, and they're like, I'm just pumping 1.5 ounces total in between feedings. And I'm like, that is amazing. That is a lot more than what I pump, and I've been breastfeeding my child for 11 months. So it's so important that we start taking those stereotypes and those paradigms. And I love how you say they start saying, hey, common is not normal, and this is what is normal. If you are breastfeeding your baby and in addition to that you are getting half an ounce when you pump, celebrate, mama. That's amazing. That's great. Then if you are not breastfeeding your baby but you are only pumping, then and you are getting 4 ounces, 5 ounces, celebrate that, because that is the same that your baby will eating. So thank you so much for that. And one other thing that I want to touch base on that for the moms is I want to get your perspective and your takeaway with the milk stash. And I had a very interesting situation this week because you know me as an OCD early on, I was like, and the social media, and first time I was like, I need a stash, I need a stash. And in addition to all my pressure, I did a stash for a couple of months until I was like, I didn't use any of this stash at all yet, and I want you to tell us how much will stay. But then I stopped, and I was actually thinking this week, I was like, wow, my baby's going to be a year in a month, and what I'm going to do with all this milk. And thank goodness, another friend reached out in social media saying that there was a mom in the hospital and they were not able to bring the baby, a 2 month old baby, to the hospital, and they were looking for milk donor. So what I did, I went down to the basement, take all my milk. I just leave like a couple of bags. I get emotional because I cannot even believe how that mom is feeling, but I was able to give it to her. And when I was doing it, I was making a video. I was saying like how much pressure we put in ourselves trying to fill the freezer. And I want you as an expert to tell the mamas the reality of when do you need a stash milk and how much do you really need. Because I was actually thinking this week that that is sometimes society putting, triggering our ego. That is more like our ego, like, oh, if I have a big stash and my ego is feeling safe, but do we really need it, and how much we are putting our mental health and our emotional health in jeopardy trying to reach that goal. So I'm just going to talk about milk stashes.
Mm. I love that you could donate that milk. That is absolutely fabulous. And that knowing, now I'm going to cry too, knowing the start of your story and how far you've come, that's a beautiful thing. So thank you for that mama, for that baby, for normalizing that, that that we can donate to other people. That's beautiful. I love that. All right. So how much do you need? In general, you don't have to have a large freezer stash. If you are uh, needing to be away from the baby, I always say like working outside the home, but like you could go on vacation, you can like go out to lunch with your friends, you get to do other things too. Um, so it's not always working parents who need a little bit of a freezer stash. But in general, you kind of just need like 1 or 2 days, right? That, you know, just having enough for just the one day makes people a little bit anxious. Like, what if my kid's extra hungry, and eats through more than what I expected? 1 or 2 days is like the minimum of what you need. Um, and having a few extra days gives you a little bit of a buffer to, maybe warm some milk and then the baby didn't eat it and now you have to get rid of it, because it sat for too long, things like that. But having a whole freezer uh, filled with milk is a really unrealistic expectation. Um, what happens if the power goes out? What happens to that milk? What happens you know, if it sits in the freezer for too long, um, and then goes bad? And I say bad, but like breast milk lasts a really long time. So, kind of using the rule of four. Breast milk is good at room temperature for 4 hours. It's good in the fridge for about 4 days. It's good in your fridge freezer for about 4 months. And then the exception to that is if you have a deep freezer and you can keep it in a deep freezer at a nice stable temperature, not opening it a lot, then you could keep it for a year. We have a deep freezer, but we have popsicles in it, and the kids are like in it all the time. So that one doesn't, that I wouldn't keep for maybe a year. But I had a really sad thing happen, that I had milk in the freezer, and it just kept getting pushed back, and other things got moved on top of it. And I found it like 2 years later. And so that couldn't be used. So I saved a little bit of it to make a breast milk necklace for myself, and I could have gotten really crafty and like made you know breast milk soap and things like that, but that does not fit into my life right now. So I could not just keep the milk in my fridge or my freezer indefinitely. So I did have to dump it, and that really broke my heart, having to get rid of it. But it was like over 2 years old, and so it wasn't able to be consumed. I did open some of it up to just like smell it and see like what's going on with it, and I think it probably would have been fine, but not for a baby, right?
And one of the things that is crazy there is that what you were saying, that we only see a part of it. Like we see this overproducer, we see those full freezers full of milk. We don't see what happened a year from there, because a lot of the time, like I was thinking, and I want to have your opinion on this one, because I was thinking, when is the only time that a person will need to have a full stash? And then I was saying, okay, if you are saying I'm gonna just pump for the first 4 months or 5 months, but I want to breastfeed my baby until a year, okay, that makes sense. You are gonna plan, make a full stash, and then from month 5 you are going to be using the stash until it's running out. Okay, but
Mhm.
that is kind of the only time that I would think about it, because even if you are working away from home, you don't need more than, like you were saying, 1 or 2 days, because when you are away, you need to pump. So it's almost like you're pumping for the next day. So I go
Mhm.
to work, and what I pump today, my baby tomorrow. So you only need a little bit of a stash there. And it's unbelievable how many people you see when that year come, trying to find how to donate their milk, trying to find, and then they end doing a lot of milk baths and jewelry, and all of that is beautiful. But the point is how much stress and pressure they put in themselves in the early months to build that, when their baby never use it at one point. So I
Mhm.
want to hear your opinion on that. And like, okay, if I'm okay in that thinking of the only time that you will need a full stash is if you are planning, like, okay, I'm gonna be away for 2 weeks, or I'm gonna just pump for the first couple of months and then feed the baby.
Right. So there are always situations where somebody's circumstance is that they are only planning to make breast milk for a certain amount of time, and so they're going to make as much as they possibly can and save it to use for the future. So some situations might be you know perhaps someone is diagnosed with a disease that requires medication that is incompatible with breastfeeding. And most medications are okay with breastfeeding because the molecules of the medication are too large to even enter into the milk lobes. And so it's too large to even get into the breast milk. But some that do are chemotherapy drugs for cancers, and some uh, very strong medications for mental health disorders that require that medication, um, and and so some of those reasons might be that a person says, I'm going to make as much milk as I can for this period of time, and then my journey with that will be over and I will move on to another part of my life story. And also, uh, there are some medications that decrease milk supply. And so, if you are intending to take those medications, knowing that they will decrease milk supply and knowing that could end breastfeeding for you for that time, then that might be another situation where someone says, well, I want to provide milk for my child. I don't care if it comes directly from the breast. I just want to have breast milk for, you know, 9 months, 6 months, a year, and so they'll make as much milk as they possibly can and store it up and then move on with medications like that. And some of those are infertility drugs that help you to get pregnant again uh, another time. So if you had problems becoming pregnant the first time and you had to take those fertility drugs, and then you want to grow your family, and you know that you'll need to take those drugs again, then you might plan ahead to stock up some milk store so that when you begin that infertility treatment, that you're able to still keep providing breast milk for your baby. Um, and one thing I wanted to mention with the with the medical reasons for needing to stop breastfeeding, um, your baby needs you as a parent more than they need your breast milk or more than they need how they eat. They need you. So if mentally you are not stable enough to breastfeed and take care of yourself and your family needs you. Your child will eat, they will be okay, but they need you. And so taking care of mental health and our physical health needs is really important, uh, not to sacrifice.
Thank you for that. And I will need to invite you because, again, because I have so many other questions and we're running out of time. But before we go, the last one, and this is a little controversial, and I want to set the stage of this question properly with the statement that I love to have my pediatrician as part of my and my baby's team. And I am completely confident that his expertise around the baby's health is important. But I want to also have a little bit more conversation with you about what mamas need to take in consideration when they are receiving breastfeeding advice from their pediatrician doctor. And I'm saying that is because, especially in the Western hemisphere, sometimes just because I wear a white coat, then we assume that is the expert, and that could be a little bit misleading. So the last couple of minutes, I would like to touch with you a little bit on that.
Yeah. So there are different levels of training that come with different certifications. And as an IBCLC, I am a huge advocate for team health experiences. So my expertise is human lactation for baby and for mom together. And that's where my expertise is. I'm not an expert in infant massage or baby sleep or any medical stuff. Um, that is the pediatrician's realm. That's their expertise. They are really wonderful generalists who can look at a big picture and say, this is what's going on with the health of your child. And that's really, really important to have different experts in different areas. Um, and their level of training is very, very different also. In the US, doctors get between 3 and 9 hours of human lactation uh, information in all of their training. Pediatricians, dentists, orthopedic doctors, they all get just, a few days lecture on breastfeeding. And so when they see a problem, they don't often know that there can be a breastfeeding solution to it. And so that's where a team approach, if a pediatrician says to you, you need to supplement your baby because they're not getting enough. The first rule of breastfeeding is feed the baby. The next is protect the milk supply. And the pediatrician knows how to feed the baby. They know how to keep the baby safe. And they're doing the best that they can with that information. The lactation expert would know how to help protect the milk supply while you're feeding the baby and get the two back together. And so having different levels of training and expertise in different areas is really important. But yes, IBCLCs in general very much want to work with pediatricians to help families meet their goals and keep babies safe.
And I think that the point there is not a one solution to all. If we go back into what you're saying, the team is like that is why it's important that you prepare yourself. If you are pregnant or if you're in the first year of life, you prepare yourself with a team, the pediatrician, the lactation consultant, the sleep consultant, because each of them can help you. And before we go, one of the things that I start doing with the doctors that I work with, when they start going into the breastfeeding part, advising, oh, you should not be breastfeeding here at night and all that. One of the things that I did with a lot of respect is I asked them, is this a medical advice based on a medical concern that you have on my baby?
Mm.
Or is your personal opinion, your personal advice? And when I found out is even when I do that respectfully, they immediately are like, oh no, I'm just telling you based on what I did with my kids. And that is good for you to know because they are pediatricians, but they're also humans and they want to help. So sometimes they give you advice based on their personal preference and opinion and experience, not as the expert medical guru, but they don't disclose that. So you think that is actually a medical advice based on a medical need when sometimes it's not. So that to close with all these beautiful whys is, mama, surround yourself with the right people, surround yourself with the right team, and know that your instinct is there for a reason. And then if it's something that is not feeling good for you, reach out, help with people like Anne, like people like me. We are here to help you and guide you into not saying who is right and who is wrong, but how we together can find the best solution for you and your baby. And thank you so, so much for being here. Please share with the amazing community of MomFit how they can learn a little bit more about you, how they can reach out to you, how they can stay in contact with you.
Sure. I have a website. It is summitlactation.com. And I have a blog that hasn't been updated in a while, so maybe I'll need to get on that. But there's some information about, I have a little series about why does my baby do that? And answers some questions about funny things that the babies do. So that is there. You can also sign up for my monthly email. It's just monthly. I promise I won't blow up your inbox. I do virtual prenatal consults. And if you are in Northeast Ohio, I do home visits in Summit and Medina counties. And you can look me up and make an appointment through my website, summitlactation.com.
Summer
Thank you,
lactation.
Joanna, so much for having me. It's a pleasure talking to you today. It's always good to see you and chat with you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. And I will bugging you to have a part two of this because we only scratched the surface. But thank you so much. I love you and I keep you in my heart for all the amazing work that you are doing with the world. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it.